Yeah. So I can start? Okay, sure. You cannot start because the host has disabled it. Cannot start your video. Let's ask you. Okay. Okay, I'm showing my video. خلاص؟ طيب. Am I audible? بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته جميعا. الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أتشرف بأن أرحب بكم جميعا هذا اليوم للحضور معنا لهذه الحلقة لاستعراض نتائج 31 ديسمبر 2024 وكذلك أخذ الأسئلة منكم إن شاء الله والإجابات عليها. بالنسبة للحضور معنا في هذا اليوم أنا وليد بن خميس الحشار الرئيس التنفيذي للبنك. معايا أحمد البلوشي نائب الرئيس التنفيذي للأعمال المصرفية، وتي غنيش نائب الرئيس التنفيذي للمالية والاستثمار، وشيخ الفارسي نائب الرئيس التنفيذي للعمليات. Good afternoon everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. It is my privilege to welcome all of you for this session of us presenting to you the results of 31st December 2024 for the bank and having a subsequent discussion and question and answer session for you. Thank you again for taking the time to join us. I am joined today, myself, I'm Walid Al-Hashar, the Chief Executive Officer of the bank. I'm joined today by Ahmed Al-Balushi, Deputy CEO of Banking, Ganesh, Deputy CEO of Finance and Investment Banking, Sheikh Al-Farsi, Deputy CEO of Operations. So first, I think I will start with the disclaimer. Of course, this is a very important slide, although even though it's administrative. The presentation contains statements relating to the bank's business and have been prepared based on publicly available information. It's for discussion purpose. It is not made for inducing buying of the shares or selling of any of the products or services of the bank. طبعا في البداية أشياء إدارية فقط من ناحية إخلاء المسؤولية الواردة في هذه الشريحة، بأن هذا العرض تم إعداده من قبل بنك مسقط بناء على معلومات متاحة للجمهور ومنشورة مسبقا، وهو للنقاش وتبادل المعلومات فقط، ولا يعتبر دعوة أو تشجيعا للاستثمار في البنك أو شراء أي من منتجاته. فالآن تعدينا المرحلة الإدارية، بستعرض محتويات هذا العرض المرئي عن بيئة العمل، القطاع المصرفي، استراتيجية بنك مسقط وأنشطته الأساسية، وعرض عن أبرز النتائج المالية للسنة المنتهية في 31 ديسمبر. So I will run through the context of the contents of this presentation, and the focus will be on the operating environment, the banking sector, our strategy and key business lines, and some key financial highlights for the results for the year ending 31st December. And then subsequent to that, I will take questions from the attendees. In terms of the operating environment, in 2024, actually, which is, alhamdulillah, no exception compared to the previous 3 years, the economy has been scoring on a third consecutive year of surplus, amounting to just a bit above $500 million riyals. Oman's economy continued to expand in the first 9 months. In fact, the real GDP has witnessed a growth of close to 2%. This is, in fact, despite degrowth in the contribution from oil activities because of some oil production curbs, And what was encouraging that it was mainly from increase in non-hydrocarbon activities, which surged by about 5% growth. The favorable, of course, oil prices, acceleration in non-hydrocarbon contributions, the reforms that have been initiated and implemented over the past few years, the reduction in the public debt levels, these are all factors that, in fact, continue to shore up our the country's fiscal deficit and its financial position. The efforts, of course, to further improve the business environment, the budgetary project allocations, support to SMEs, accelerating investments in renewable energy and green hydrogen. Also, the government's strong commitment to diversifying Oman's economy highlights its strategic approach for fostering resilience as well as sustainable development during what we know to be a volatile global economic period. And this has been actually continuing over the past several months. The headline inflation in the economy averaged about 0.6%, and this is almost half of what it was. This is between January and November 24, half of what it was in 2023, reflecting an easing of core food and transport inflation. In terms of public debt management front, this is also quite an encouraging and a good story. The government was able to utilize oil revenue surplus generated in the last few years in paying some of its outstanding debt and reduce the impact of what we have seen as rising interest rates over the past 2 years. The debt to GDP ratio has reduced from the high levels of 61% in 2021 to almost half now, to 34% in 2024. And further, the government actually anticipates another 13% reduction. The government anticipates a 13% reduction in debt servicing costs in 2025. And this is all due to marked improvements in the fundamentals. And in 2024, what's a good story also there is Oman gained back its investment grade ratings after a period of 7 years. Looking forward in terms of the 2025 budget, it highlights a good and significant economic activities, including developments and investment expenditure in several strategic projects, along also continuing the social and basic spending in key sectors of education, healthcare, social welfare, and housing. And of course, the government and Oman is guided by Vision 2040. It can continue to be a press forward with broad array of reforms, with the goal to achieve strong, job-rich, sustainable, private sector-led growth in the economy and ensuring high living standards in the country. في عام 2024 الحمد لله سجل اقتصاد السلطنة فائض، وهذا للعام الثالث على التوالي. الحمد لله بلغ أكثر من نصف مليار ريال لعام 2024. والاقتصاد العماني يواصل نموه خاصة في الأشهر التسعة الأولى المنتهية في سبتمبر 24. الناتج المحلي الإجمالي في الأشهر التسعة الأولى نما بنسبة تقريبا 2%. هذا على الرغم من انخفاض مساهمة الأنشطة النفطية، وهذا سببه كان انخفاض كمية إنتاج النفط عامة. ولكن جاء هذا النمو مدفوع، وهذا شيء مشجع الحمد لله، بشكل أساسي من زيادة الأنشطة غير الهيدروكربونية، والتي سجلت زيادة بنسبة تقريبا 5%. كذلك العوامل الداعمة مثل أسعار النفط الجيدة والتوسع في مساهمة الأنشطة الغير هيدروكربونية وانخفاض ملحوظ في مستويات الدين العام ساعدت كثير وساهمت كثير في تعزيز الوضع الاقتصادي للبلد. هناك جهود كبيرة مبذولة لتحسين بيئة الأعمال بشكل أكبر، مواصلة تنفيذ المشاريع، دعم المؤسسات الصغيرة والمتوسطة، وتسريع الاستثمارات في الطاقة المتجددة والهيدروجين، وهذا يعكس التزام الحكومة بتنويع اقتصاد عمان، وهو يعتبر طبعا نهج استراتيجي للبلد. ويعكس طبعا كذلك هناك تعزيز المرونة، تعزيز التنمية المستدامة، وهذا في ظل يعني تقلبات اقتصادية عالمية مستمرة ومستمرة على مدى عدة أشهر، وكذلك يمكن خلال السنوات الماضية. في عام 2024 الحمد لله النمو الاقتصادي كان معتدل، والمتوقع أن يتسارع هذا النمو ليصل إلى نحو 3% في عام 2025، وهذا مدعوم بانتعاش الأنشطة الهيدروكربونية. كذلك بلغ متوسط التضخم العام في الاقتصاد 0.6 خلال الفترة من يناير إلى نوفمبر 2020، وهذا تقريبا نصف ما كان عليه في السنة الماضية اللي كان في تقريبا 1% في 2023. وهذا الحمد لله يعكس استمرار تخفيف التضخم في القطاعات الأساسية والغذاء والنقل. بالنسبة لإدارة الدين العام، تمكنت الحكومة من الاستفادة مثل السنوات الماضية من فائض عائدات النفط الناتج في السنوات القليلة الماضية لسداد الديون المستحقة، وكذلك الحد من تأثير ارتفاع أسعار الفائدة، والتي يعني لاحظناها من خلال سنة 2022 و2023. وتتوقع الحكومة انخفاض بنسبة تقريبا 13% في تكلفة خدمة الدين العام لعام 2025. وبفضل هذا التحسن في الاقتصاد بشكل عام، استعادت السلطنة تصنيفها الائتماني الاستثماري في عام 2024. كذلك إذا نظرنا للأمام، ميزانية عام 2025 تسلط الضوء على النشاط الاقتصادي، بما في ذلك الإنفاق التنموي والاستثماري في مشاريع استراتيجية مختلفة ومتنوعة. هذا إلى جانب طبعا الإنفاق الاجتماعي والأساسي في الاقتصاد في القطاعات الرئيسية مثل التعليم، الرعاية الصحية والرعاية الاجتماعية والإسكان. وعمان والحمد لله دائما تسترشد برؤية 2040، وهناك الحكومة متواصلة في تنفيذ مجموعة واسعة من المبادرات بهدف تحقيق نمو قوي وداعم لكل القطاعات، ولضمان توفير الوظائف وتعزيز مستويات المعيشة. We move now to the banking sector overview. The banking sector continued to grow, and it also continues to play a vital role in supporting the economy of the country. The banking sector has also shown robust financial indicators over the past few years, and 2024 was no exception. The regulatory oversight and the prudential guidance continued to support the sector's resilience, and it shielded it quite well from adverse impacts that have been experienced globally. In fact, the recently released financial stability report in 2024 by the Central Bank of Oman highlighted this, and highlighted the country's robust financial system, despite all of these global challenges, geopolitical tensions, tightened monetary policies, and so on. And the CBO, in fact, states that while global inflation and economic uncertainties persist, Oman's financial sector has shown resilience, supported by high oil prices and, more importantly, fiscal discipline. And the banking sector has also reported strong earnings, very strong capital positions, ample liquidity, and low non-performing loans. In fact, over the past few years, banks have invested heavily in technologies, and this is to reposition their offerings and continue to invest in technology and digitizing their operations, expanding their physical branches, making sure their phygital networks are also expanded. So all in all, these are investments for the future and are continuing in the banking sector. There was good growth momentum. This is supported by the economic recovery and the positive macroeconomic indicators of the country. Credit, in fact, increased to 32.5 billion, witnessing a growth of about 2 billion, or about 6.7% over the level achieved in 2023. And then deposits have also increased to 31.7 billion. That's about 9%, amounting to an annual growth of about 2.6 billion. Islamic financing and customer deposits contributed to 21% of the total sector and grew annually by about 14 and 21% respectively in 2024. As I had mentioned earlier, on the backdrop of Budget 25, which promotes expansionary investments in key core sectors of the economy, and then also given the elevated or comfortable levels of oil prices, the positive macroeconomic outlook, and the government's serious focus on reforms and development strategies, we expect that it will be giving quite a good momentum and a much needed booster for the sector growth, helping it achieve even better financial performance and hopefully stronger financial position for all the banks in Oman. القطاع المصرفي يواصل توسعه ومساهمته الحيوية في دعم الاقتصاد الوطني. المؤشرات المالية عززت الحمد لله هذا التوجه وهذا الأداء. هناك كذلك الرقابة والتوجيهات التنظيمية، مرونة القطاع، كل هذه ساعدت على حماية القطاع من التأثيرات السلبية الناتجة عن التحديات الخارجية التي رأيناها خلال الأشهر الماضية أو خلال السنوات الماضية. تقرير الاستقرار المالي لعام 2024 الذي أصدره البنك المركزي العماني سلط مؤخرا على الضوء على قوة النظام المالي في البلاد على الرغم من التحديات العالمية والتي تتمثل في توترات جيوسياسية، سياسات نقدية متشددة. البنك المركزي ذكر على الرغم من استمرار التضخم العالمي والتأثيرات الأخرى على المشهد الاقتصادي، أظهر القطاع المالي العماني مرونة، وذلك مدعوما بأسعار النفط الجيدة وكذلك الانضباط المالي. والقطاع المصرفي سجل أرباحا قوية، وضع رأس مالي قوي، سيولة وفيرة، وانخفاض في القروض المتعثرة. كذلك على مدى السنوات الماضية استثمرت البنوك بشكل كبير في التقنيات الحديثة وطورت في منتجاتها وخدماتها، واستثمرت في مجال التكنولوجيا ورقمنة العمليات. في عام 2024 القطاع شهد نمو جيد مدعوم طبعا بالانتعاش الاقتصادي والتوقعات الإيجابية للاقتصاد ككل. قيمة المحفظة الائتمانية للبنوك ارتفعت إلى 32.5 مليار، نمو بتقريبا 2 مليار ريال عماني، وهذا يسجل تقريبا 6.7% على المستوى الذي تم تحقيقه في 2023. كذلك قيمة الودائع ارتفعت إلى 31.7 مليار بزيادة تقريبا 9%. النمو السنوي تقريبا 2.6 مليار ريال عماني في الودائع. التمويل الإسلامي كذلك كان مواكبا لهذا النمو، حيث أنه يمثل تقريبا 21% من إجمالي القطاع، وحقق زيادة سنوية قدرها 14% و21% بالنسبة للأصول وللودائع أو للقروض أو للودائع. كما أشرت سابقا يعني في الميزانية العامة للدولة لعام 2025، وهي تركز على استثمارات توسعية في القطاعات الرئيسية للاقتصاد، كذلك أسعار النفط، التوقعات الإيجابية للاقتصاد الكلي، تركيز الحكومة الجاد على المبادرات والاستراتيجيات التنموية. هذا كله نتوقع أنه يسهم إسهام إيجابي في توفير الدعم الذي يحتاجه القطاع لمزيد من النمو إن شاء الله، وبالتالي تحقيق المزيد من التحسن في الأداء المالي بالنسبة للقطاع والمركز المالي للبنوك العمانية في السنوات القادمة. This slide, we can see a stable growth of the key parameters in the banking sector, compounded annual credit growth of about 4.7% registered over the last 5 years, which is quite healthy, including the disruption created by the pandemic during this period. Similarly, a compounded annual growth of 6.1% registered in customer deposits over the past 5 years. And after having recovered back to pre-pandemic levels with a 21% growth in 2022 and 11% growth in 2023, the profits of top 7 Omani banks shows further improvements of 15.2% in 2024. The sector is likely to grow and continue to grow at a similar pace in terms of credit and deposit growth going forward. Also, due to the global geopolitical scenarios and situations and certain uncertainties and interest rate situations, banks will have to continue to tactically manage liquidity. But in the medium term, we expect that there will definitely be a good and stable performance. في هذه الشريحة يمكننا ملاحظة أن النمو مستقر للمؤشرات الرئيسية للقطاع المصرفي. يعني لو شفنا بعض هذه الجرافس اللي موجودة، تم تسجيل معدل نمو سنوي للائتمان بنسبة قريبة من 5% في محفظة الائتمان بالنسبة للقطاع على مدى ال5 سنوات الماضية، وهو معدل جيد، خاصة إذا احنا يعني أخذنا في الاعتبار أنه من ضمن هذه ال5 سنوات كانت هناك جائحة كورونا. كذلك معدل نمو سنوي بتقريبا 6% في ودائع الزبائن على مدى السنوات ال5 الماضية. وبعد التعافي بالنسبة للأرباح بالنسبة للبنوك فيما قبل الجائحة حققت في 21% في النمو في الأرباح في 22، 11% في 2023. في 2024 أكبر 7 بنوك أرباحها تحسنت بنسبة تقريبا 15%. ومن المتوقع أن يحقق القطاع نمو متوسط إن شاء الله على غرار ما تم تحقيقه في السنوات الماضية، وإن شاء الله من حيث الائتمان والودائع، مع احتمال يعني تأثيرات قصيرة المدى على جودة الأصول والمخصصات العامة، وهذه يعني مدروسة وهناك الاحتياطيات موجودة لها. كذلك هناك العوامل الجيوسياسية العالمية ومستويات أسعار الفائدة تتطلب منا يعني إدارة سيولة بمرونة وتكتيكية دائما، ولكن نتوقع أن الأداء سيظل مستقر وجيد على المدى المتوسط. In terms of Bank Muscat strategy, the bank's vision is focused on key strategic pillars, and they continue to be our customer centricity, our market leadership, efficiency and productivity, and innovation. These are focused to serve all our stakeholders better every day. And our stakeholders are our customers, our employees, our shareholders, and societies we operate in. We focus on leveraging our strong branch value, our financial position, and our good human resources. All of these are strengths that the bank has to deliver best possible value for all of our stakeholders. رؤية البنك تعتمد على ركائز استراتيجية أساسية: تعزيز خدمة الزبائن، ريادة السوق والكفاءة والإنتاجية والإبداع. هذه الركائز كلها موجهة إلى خدمة كل الشركاء المعنيين على البنك، وهم الزبائن، الموظفين، المساهمين، والمجتمعات التي نعمل بها. كذلك نواصل التركيز على تنمية والاستفادة من شبكة فروع البنك، مركزه المالي، كفاءة الموارد البشرية فيه، لتقديم أفضل الخدمات والقيمة للمعنيين بمصالح البنك، ودائما نتطلع إلى التحسين والتطوير. In terms of a quick snapshot of the various business lines of the bank continues to provide all banking services with well-established lines in corporate banking, personal banking, wholesale banking, and Islamic banking services. All of these lines have been performing quite well over the last few years and providing healthy profit contributions. In general, the three lines, corporate, personal, and wholesale banking, contribute around 26 to 35% each to our profit line, and Islamic banking contributes around 3 to 4%. Our overseas operations, in fact, are showing continued growth, and this year in 2024 have contributed 3% to our bottom line. Islamic banking continues to do well and has shown healthy growth since inception. The slide on the right shows that the bank does have a well-diversified loan portfolio, and the deposit portfolio is quite strong, which is driven by retail deposits and supported by government and private sector deposits. هذه الشريحة تعطي نظرة عامة على الأنشطة المتنوعة اللي يمارسها البنك. كما تعلمون البنك يقدم مجموعة متكاملة من الخدمات المصرفية، سواء للشركات أو للأفراد أو للأعمال المصرفية المتخصصة وخدمات الصيرفة الإسلامية. كل هذه النشاطات أدت أداء جيد خلال السنوات الماضية، ومساهمتها قيمة في تحقيق أرباح مستقرة وفي نمو. وبشكل عام يعني تساهم هذه الخدمات المصرفية الثلاث، منها الأفراد والمتخصصة والشركات، ما يعادل من 26 إلى 35% من إجمالي أرباح البنك. وخدمات الصيرفة الإسلامية تقريبا 4% من إجمالي الأرباح. وكذلك بشكل إيجابي ساهمت عمليات البنك الدولية بتقريبا 3% من صافي الأرباح. البنك يمتلك مثل ما تشوف موظف في الرسم البياني على الجانب اليمين محفظة قروض متنوعة، وكذلك محفظة الودائع متنوعة بودائع أفراد، ودائع حكومية، ودائع قطاع خاص وغيره. فكل هذا يعني كلها هذه عوامل جدا تساعد البنك على في أساسياته وفي نموه في الوقت القادم إن شاء الله. من ناحية in terms of some of the key financial highlights, this slide talks about the bank's financial performance, which ended in 2024. You can see that the top line performance was strong in spite of, like I said before, continuing global and regional challenges. The bank has always been agile in terms of balance sheet management and funding dynamics, which helped us to post this healthy net interest income. Also, the net profits were higher by 6.2% over the last year, with healthy business growth and moderated credit cost. In terms of non-funded income, it has improved in 2024 by 5.1%. Operating expenses increased by about 6%, which is relative to the growth in the bank's loan portfolio, showing a growth of 3.6% year-on-year basis. Deposit portfolio has also shown a growth of 3.6%. In terms of total asset quality, the total provisions are about 1.7 times of the NPLs of the bank, reflecting healthy provision levels. هذه الشريحة تعرض الأداء المالي للبنك خلال الفترة المنتهية في ديسمبر. كما تلاحظون يعني الأداء الكلي للبنك كان قوي، على الرغم من كل ما ذكرته سابقا من ناحية التحديات العالمية والإقليمية. وساهم النهج المرن اللي يتبعه البنك في إدارة الميزانية العامة وديناميكيات التمويل على تحقيق نمو صحي في صافي إيرادات الفوائد. كذلك صافي الأرباح ارتفع بتقريبا 6% مقارنة بالعام الماضي مع نمو جيد للأعمال. وتحسنت الإيرادات غير الممولة في 2024 بنسبة 5% تقريبا، وكذلك زادت المصاريف التشغيلية بنسبة 6%. بدأ هذا طبعا نظرا لنمو الأعمال والأنشطة الإدارية وتوسع البنية التحتية. محفظة قروض البنك سجلت نمو بنسبة 3.6% على أساس سنوي، والودائع بنفس النسبة تقريبا. جودة الأصول وصل إجمالي المخصصات إلى 1.7 مرة من القروض المتعثرة للبنك. هذا يعكس مستويات اقتصاد جيدة الحمد لله، والتي يحافظ عليها البنك. In terms of operating performance, this slide provides a quick snapshot of that. You see that the bank's NIMs have been stable over the last 5 years. The bank has been able to manage the yield and funding costs to maintain the NIMs at these efficient to maintain these NIMs. Also, in terms of efficient balance sheet and liquidity management, timely portfolio repricing and deploying agile hedging strategies, all these have helped us maintain and grow the NIMs and keeping them sustainable over the past few years. The bank's fee-based income was also quite stable with a healthy level of 31 to 35% of total income throughout this period. In 2024, cost-to-income ratio has actually reduced to 38. It increased marginally to 38.6%. Nevertheless, we see it at quite a healthy level at 38%. The ROE of the bank has also witnessed a significant improvement from lower levels of 9% in 2020 to reach 12.7% in 2024, after reaching 12.69 in 2023. So it continues to grow. ROA also continues at a healthy momentum, 1.64%, compared to the last 5 years when it had reached a low of 1.3% in 2020. هذه الشريحة تعرض لمحة سريعة عن الأداء التشغيلي للبنك. حافظ البنك على استقرار صافي هامش الفائدة خلال السنوات ال5 الماضية، وتمكن طبعا من إدارة العوائد وتكلفة التمويل للحفاظ على هذا الاستقرار من خلال إدارة فاعلة للميزانية والسيولة، وإعادة تسعير المحفظة، وتطبيق استراتيجيات تحوط مرنة في إدارة السيولة. وكذلك إيرادات البنك استقرت من الرسوم على نسبة تتراوح بين 31 إلى 35% من إجمالي الإيرادات، وهذه نسبة جيدة. وفي عام ارتفعت طبعا نسبة التكلفة إلى الدخل بشكل طفيف إلى 38.3% مقارنة ب 38.3%، ولكنها تظل في يعني مستوى جدا صحي بالنسبة للتكلفة مقارنة بالعوائد. الشهد العائد على حقوق الملكية كذلك تحسن ملحوظ، ارتفعت مستوياته من 9% في عام 2020 ليصل إلى 12.7% في 24، بعد ما وكذلك في 12.6% في ديسمبر 2023. العائد كذلك على الأصول حقق نمو إيجابي وصل إلى 1.6%، وهو من أعلى المستويات خلال ال5 سنوات الماضية. In terms of the asset quality, the slide provides trends on asset quality over the past 5 years. You can see that the bank has been able to maintain the NPL ratio at around 3 to 5%. However, the coverage ratio continues to be at a higher level of ranging between 135 to 170% over the last 5 years, reflecting prudent and agile policies in terms of managing the asset quality. As I mentioned earlier, the bank's gross loan portfolio is quite well diversified, well managed, with prudent credit policy. The bank was able to grow the gross loans by 4.4% during 2024, after growing the base by 4.7% already in 2023. The bank continues its prudent provision and credit policy, making sure that our stable performance continues. هذه الشريحة تعرض نبذة عن جودة الأصول على مدار السنوات ال5 الماضية. البنك الحمد لله تمكن من الحفاظ على نسبة القروض المتعثرة عند حوالي 3 إلى 5% تقريبا، ومعدل التغطية في مستوى جيد بين 135 وصل إلى 170% خلال السنوات الخمس الماضية. وكما ذكرنا سابقا، إجمالي محفظة قروض البنك تتميز بالتنوع ويتم إدارتها على نحو جيد من خلال سياسات ائتمان مدروسة. حقق البنك من خلال هذا كله تحقيق نمو بنسبة 4.4% خلال عام 24. والبنك يواصل اتباع سياسة المخصصات والائتمان لضمان أداء مستقر للبنك في السنوات القادمة. In terms of funding and liquidity, the bank has a well-balanced funding mix. Around 70% of the funding coming from customer deposits and the balance through interbank borrowings and equity. This has been the situation and the position for the past few years, in fact. And it continues to hold high level of liquid assets over the last 5 years. And as I mentioned earlier, the bank's capital position is one of the highest amongst Omani peers and one of the strongest amongst also GCC peers as well. And if you can see that the capital position is largely driven by core equity capital, along with retained profits after paying healthy dividends over the past many years. في هذه الشريحة موضوع واضح وضع التمويل والسيولة للبنك. يمتلك البنك والحمد لله مزيج متوازن للتمويل. 70% من هذا التمويل للبنك من ودائع الزبائن والأرصدة الواردة من عمليات الاقتراض بين البنوك وحقوق الملكية. وهذا الوضع مستقر في خلال السنوات الماضية. كذلك البنك يواصل احتفاظه بمستوى جيد من الأصول السائلة على مدى ال5 سنوات الماضية، وهذه الأصول تعتبر أصول ذات سيولة عالية الجودة. وكما ذكرت سابقا، المركز الرأسمالي للبنك من أعلى المراكز بين أقرانه في السلطنة، وأحد أقوى المراكز بين أقرانه في دول مجلس التعاون الخليجي أيضا. والمركز الرأسمالي للبنك يعتمد على حد صغير على رأس المال الأساسي لحقوق الملكية إلى جانب الأرباح محتجزة بعد توزيع أرباح مجزية على مدى السنوات العديدة الماضية. إلى هنا وصلت إلى نهاية العرض، وإذا كانت هناك أسئلة يرجى استخدام إشارة رفع اليد، وسنعطي الحضور فرصة لطرح الأسئلة الآن إن شاء الله. That was my final slide. We will now move to a question and answer session. If you have a question, please use the raise hand functionality and we will unmute. Thank you. You see that? Yeah. 2 participants.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this presentation.
Good afternoon.
I have a few questions, if I can continue.
Yes, please.
Yeah. I have a question on the non-interest income. Your net fee income declined by 5% in fourth quarter, and the operating income also declined in the last 2 quarters. So what are the key factors behind this decline? And also, are there any strategies taken to boost this?
Please.
Yeah. Thank you, Mana. I think your question was on the quarter-on-quarter change on the fee income and operating income, is it?
Yes.
Okay. See, in the fee income side, there are seasonality, particularly Q2 is the highest if you see historically, because there are certain incomes flow into that particular quarter, like investment income, dividend income, and so on. And as a result, when you compare quarter on quarter, there will be volatility. What we see is the year-on-year growth. That same aspect also has an impact on the operating income. I hope that clarifies.
Okay. The next question I have on METAC, the operating revenue was lower by 8%, and operating profit was also lower by 15%. So, can you also explain what are the key factors behind this decline?
Yeah, sure. On MITAC, I think in our last discussion also we talked about. MITAC funding structure is quite different from the bank's overall funding structure. Their reliance, like any other Islamic entities in Oman, is mainly on the institutional funding side. So if you look at the last 2 years, the cost of funds based on the Fed action has been going up. So that had an impact on their top line in terms of cost of funds going up during the last 2 years period, and without much corresponding improvement in the yield side. So now we see the trend reversing for the past 3 to 4 months based on the Fed action and the subsequent impact on the Omani real cost of funds. There has been a moderation. So we will see that trend reversing. This is not specific to MITAC, it's generally for smaller entities, which are Islamic banking entities, either windows or individual banks.
Yeah.
Also, can you give an insight into what is the METAC's medium to long-term strategy to sustain growth and enhance the profitability?
Yeah, that's true. In terms of our medium to long-term strategy on Islamic banking, obviously we focus on low-cost funding, focus on retail deposits. The branch network is key. We keep expanding. We have 23, 24 branches as we operate. We also invest in digital front to penetrate more into retail segment. So those aspects will help us to diversify the funding mix. And obviously, with the global interest rates getting moderated, may not to that extent we expected, but gradually getting moderated, that will also help in improving the bottom line.
Right, thank you. I move to Abbas now, please.
Thank you, gentlemen, for the call. Thank you, Sheikh, for an excellent presentation. You've covered pretty much everything from top down. Just specifically talking about your bank and what's true for your bank generally tends to be true for the sector. How do you see net interest margins and growth evolve over 2025 and 2026? There was a recent Fed meeting, and they were indicating that they're going to hold for now, but there might be a couple of cuts in the future. Now, you managed to hold on to spreads, thanks to your fantastic leadership in savings deposit. But in general, where do you see spreads going from now on, and where do you see growth coming in as well, sir? That's my first question.
Okay, thank you, Abbas. Yeah, that's an important question. Obviously, we'll have to follow the global scenario vis-a-vis what happens to interest rates, because a large part of our funding relies on that, and our funding cost also relies on that in terms of both on the funding side as well as the lending side. Also, in terms of the Omani riyals, we have to be able to tactfully manage this piece and ensuring that our cost of funds remains at reasonable and robust levels. So, to cut a long story short, I do not expect a significant growth in net interest margin. I think, and if we're able to achieve this similar margins in 2025, we would be doing quite a decent achievement. But the focus should be on the cost of funds, because I expect competition to be quite severe or quite strong for the lending side. So there could be some shrinkages in terms of the yield, slightly, but in terms of that's where we need to be managing our cost also at the same time.
Sure. Okay, but things are looking benign from that perspective for you. I mean, at least given your strong leadership in current account and savings account.
Yeah, well, I mean, we will have to react. So thank you very much for your confidence, Abbas. But we have been very agile over 24 and 25. One, in terms of, yes, we've been helped by the savings, large savings account balances and our branch franchise, but we've also taken several steps in terms of reducing our cost of funds on foreign currencies by taking different steps to manage that in terms of the liquidity position and so on. So we will have to stay on our toes, is what I mean, Abbas.
That's good to hear. My second question is, you've always pretty. I mean, whenever you speak about risk, you use prudent rather than conservative. Now, when it comes to your coverage ratios, they've gone up and now they're close to 170%, if I remember correctly.
Right.
At what point do you be like, hey, listen, there's no real skeleton in the closet, right? Because that makes me think, are you expecting a big sort of hit to come in, right? Because the sector has been at the 130, 140 range. You've led the sector for a while, and suddenly when you start providing at 170, although it's good, but it makes me wonder: are there any risks that are hidden that we don't know about?
That's a very good question, Abbas. No, we don't, and it remains to be prudent, but we expect moderation in the coverage ratio in terms of 25 and although يعني these are, I mean, this is what we aim for, that to moderate it. We don't, frankly, يعني, barring any unknown surprises, we're not يعني, that worried about a sharp increase, God forbid, in NPAs of the bank. But you see, I think it's very important to highlight that the rise in the coverage ratio is mainly on stage two. And that's where we are being prudent. It's not necessarily due to stage three accounts or expecting that more will go into stage three, but stage two accounts that we see could have prolonged aspects where we need to make sure that we don't get into bumps on the road for the future, which is not good for a bank of the size of Bank Muscat. So that's why we make sure that we have the adequate provisions for those. But in general, we are comfortable. I don't think you will see an unending increase of the coverage ratio from 170 to even higher levels. That's not our aim.
Thank you, Sheikh. And my last question is, and I'll probably go back in queue, is my colleague asked you about Mithaq, but if I have to start scaling Mithaq to Bank Niswa, right? Similar asset base, but your return on assets is probably half of Niswa. Your ROE is close to 4%, I think. And then you're looking at, your conventional bank. Obviously, when I talk about ROE, I talk about adjusted ROE. So I think you ended the year at 10.7% after taking care of perpetual interest. And logically, your conventional ROEs are much higher than Mithaq. So at what point do you be like, what? let me pull back. Because do you really see a path to ROEs going forward in Mithaq to come to a conventional level? Or is there a more serious conversation that you need to have, when it comes to Mithaq?
Yeah, thank you, Abbas. This is Ganesh here. On the ROE front for Mithaq, I think as we talked about earlier, the funding mix is one of the key component that over a period will get addressed. The second component, particularly since you compared with Bank Niswa, the level of credit provisions we make, again on a prudent basis, is higher compared to any other Islamic windows in the market. These two components had an impact for the last 2 years on Mithaq, but I think going forward, those get moderated as well. So, but going back to your question on ROEs of Islamic entities to catch up to the conventional level, but I think it's a long way out. The reasons are these are small entities. The reliance on financial institution or institutional deposit base is quite high. That structurally needs to change over a period of time. It is going to take much longer. Second is the number of other streams have to kick in terms of fee income. They are not really full-fledged in terms of treasury operations, investment banking, private banking, and so on. Also need to catch up on Islamic banking across all Islamic banking windows and entities. So it's probably in the next 3 years, is it going to change to conventional level of ROE? No. Maybe the 5 to 10 years horizon, possible.
Thank you, Mr. Ganesh, for the well-rounded answer. All the best to you and the team.
Thank you. Next is Shaur Turabi.
Yes, hi, gentlemen. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, you are.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for the opportunity. So my question relates to the upcoming trend in the interest rates and net interest margins. So once again, I'd like to allude to the point that was raised earlier. In a declining interest rate scenario, I sort of am trying to understand what is the lag, and if there is any, in if CBO decides to cut down the interest rates by 50 bips today, what's the sort of lag that you would have to give your advances. Obviously you'll have to cut down your interest rates as well on the advances that you have given. So what's the lag between the two?
Go ahead.
Yeah, Sharu, thank you. See, when rates market rates move up and down, obviously there are different behaviors on the balance sheet, on the asset side and liability side. So generally, there is a little lag on asset repricing compared to liability repricing. So liabilities get repriced quickly, and the asset side, it takes about 6 to 9 months in terms of repricing. So obviously, when the interest rates decline, the same impact will be seen. So we already started seeing in the last 3 to 4 months in terms of deposit rates going down, and immediately there is a positive impact. But maybe 6 to 9 months, there will be, as Sheikh Walid talked about earlier, there will be pressure on the yield across all banks. Because one, the Fed rate going down will have impact on the dollar book, and the corresponding impact on the Omani Riyal will also start flowing in over the next 6 to 12 months.
Perfect, sir. Thank you. And if I could delve into it a little bit deeper, with regards to retail versus the corporate loan portfolio, which of these two segments take the impact first of the decline or the increase?
The retail is usually fixed rate sort of mechanism in Oman with the cap of 6% regulated by CBO. So we don't expect the existing book to get repriced upwards or downwards generally. Only the new booking would go into new rates based on the market competition. So we don't expect any major change in the retail yield. But on the corporate, again, depending on the mix on the book of each bank. So if banks have large working capital facilities, those get repriced within a 1-year period. But if there are term loans where the price is fixed or reference to a benchmark, the impact would be minimal.
Great. Thank you, sir. And last question from my side would be with regards to the investments. Now, when we talk about investments, how exposed are you to the interest rate changes? I mean, what percentage of your investments is in the floating rate and bond?
You are a little breaking, Sharur, towards the end of your question.
I'm sorry. Is it better now?
Yeah, it's clear.
Yeah. Okay. So with regards to investments, I was interested in knowing that what percentage of your total investments, I can see it's a 2.1 billion riyals investment on your book. What percentage of it is exposed to the interest rate? So, what portion is floating and what is fixed, if you could guide us
See,
regarding that.
the investment book, if I have to give you a broader breakup, which is also in the financial, is more than of the 2 billion, more than 1.3, 1.4 billion is all government development bond and T-bills, largely Omani T-bills, as well as US dollar T-bills. So depending on maturity profile of these products, these are fixed rate, so there's no floating rate. Depending on the maturity profile of these products, as and when they mature, they will be reinvested. So it will have that impact. Within the remaining debt, bonds with local bonds and outside Oman sort of bonds on private sector. Again, these are all fixed rate, usually 3 to 5 years sort of a maturity. So we don't see any volatility on the interest rate on the investment.
Right.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Abbas again, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheikh. Just a couple of more questions.
I have
Clearly,
Sundar after Abbas, just to be clear.
So I'm happy to give it to Sundar, sir. I'll come back because he's not asked a question yet. I'll
So
come
let
back.
me take Sundar, please. Thank you, Abbas.
Yes.
Thank you. Please, Sundar.
Hi, Sheikh and Ganesh. It's a pleasure to meet you after a long time, I think. Just a few kind of strategic question from my end, because you know how the banking sector is moving in future, and a lot of changes are happening. Like what you said about competition, it's not about the traditional competition. The new age competition is also coming in. And Bank Muscat historically has talked about certain investments in fintech, certain changes in the strategy, a lot of things, but nothing has seriously happened across the board. Do you think anything you're working on being a leader? Because at some point of time, the market is still closed. At some point of time, it will be open, like what in other markets are happening. There are the new age digital asset like models will come in and hit you. Do you think this will hit you? Because already we are in a very substantially, if you look at the ROE of the banks, considerably lower. Do you think any strategic shift you're looking at? Because Bank Muscat, we like as Bank Muscat because it's a stable one. We don't see any major kind of changes, at least the stability is there, like what you have been always saying, prudent. But the one issue, what we are looking at is like what kind of growth we can see in terms of how we can see through a different Bank Muscat or a new kind of Bank Muscat going into the next 3 to 5 years, because that is very critical for the, because anyhow, I think if you look at all competition is coming across, if you look at everywhere the competition is coming, do you see any kind of indication? I believe you might be doing that, I think, but still I want to understand from a perspective of how you're going to face this.
Thank you, Sundar. That's first, when you talk about technology, we have been investing in technology quite heavily, and that is mainly seen in terms of the advancements that we keep developing in our applications and our digital channels, and the uptick in terms of usage in it. Now, when it comes to fintechs, we have also participated with a portfolio to invest through BM Innovate in fintech companies across the world, and that's also part and parcel of our strategy. Then when you say that ROEs are at a low level, I'm not sure what you mean by them being at a lower levels at 12.7%. That's generally a market, a regional or market scenario and a market. But we see them as quite healthy, and they have been growing. When you talk about what our strategies are over the next few years, we have a number of strategies, but we need to be careful and make sure that whatever we invest in is actually it's not going to be some things of the nice to haves or the wow factor, but some things that are going to be clear, bringing in benefits to the shareholders of the bank, or marking better efficiencies in terms of what we do through innovation or acquisition of more and more customers. If you look at the digital space, if you talk about digital banks, if that's what you are referring to, for us, digital banks are a phenomenon that is nice to watch, but it's also not something that is going to be gaining momentum as fast as one would think. There are still quite a few of them that are not really have not really achieved a decent momentum despite the sizable investments that are there. So how we view the scenario is digital banking, and in particular standalone digital banking, is more like a defensive strategy for any incumbent to make sure that, because it does in and of itself does not really make quite a bit of money. But what you do and how you monetize it is by making sure that you bring in a larger customer base into your folds, and that's when cross-selling starts happening. And that's where we continue to invest and continue to make sure that our digital platforms are ready for those kinds of scenarios. In addition, innovation. We talk about artificial intelligence and we talk about, the different aspects of where the sector is going, but also the world is going. We have already been a pioneer in terms of actually employing robotics within our operations to make our operations more efficient, get our analytics in place for our customer relationship management systems, our acquisitions, our loan growth. All of that happens through robotics and analytics from the different systems that we have and that we have developed internally. When it comes to artificial intelligence, we're using artificial intelligence today at a smaller scale, but we have many use cases for it already. And we are going to continue to develop it and invest in it, especially when it comes to AML and when it comes to KYC and when it comes to fraud monitoring and so on. And these are quite important projects for us. So all in all, I think what's important in terms of showing this Bank Muscat story and moving forward and what we expect to see in the future are the fundamentals. Today, we have grown our customers to a significantly large base. And that we have done through the fundamentals of the bank, through the digital channels of the bank, through digitization of close to 75% of the bank's branch services into the palm of our customers' hands. 75% are digitized. Opening a bank account is through digital now. And so we have been able to acquire more and more customers. The future is monetizing all of that through cross-selling, through enhancing of those balances, through making sure those transactions flow through the bank's counters and so on and so forth. And we have a number of initiatives that are already in place for that. So that's really in a nutshell what I think. Sundar. Okay, any other questions, Sundar, or can I move to Abbas?
Yeah, I have another question from my end, Sheikh. I think just want to understand from your perspective, like everybody talked about the Mithaq, but in a traditional side also, if you look at Bank Muscat size is there, but if you look at the kind of growth expectation for the next 2 to 3 year perspective, I know a lot of kind of projects are coming in. The competition is also coming. What level of growth you are looking at on a sustainable basis for Bank Muscat conventional side? Do you continue to grow at the same level of the market, or do you see a strategy like where you want to be a bit more aggressive and grow a bit more than the market? How do you see in terms of the pure loan growth in the coming 2 to 3 year perspective?
We expect it to be growing along with the economy of the country and the market. This is in terms of organic. So that's what we expect as far as that is concerned. So we expect it to be growing in line with the market and the market dynamics. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Abbas.
Thanks.
Yeah, I will finish Abbas and then I will go to Abu Nawaf. Yes, Abbas.
A couple of macro questions. One is, I'm sure sooner or later you're going to be asked this. The second largest competitor is at an 18% market share and a 15% asset market share and 15% loan market share. And obviously Bank Muscat sits pretty at the top. Now, how do you see the sector evolving if, let's say, this competitor had to go to a 25, 26% market share by another acquisition? What do you think happens to, Bank Muscat's positioning? Do you see ROEs coming under pressure for you? Because obviously there is some speculation that another consolidation might happen in the banking sector.
Yeah, that's very true. And this is probably going to happen. But that's a good thing. We don't look at it as a bad thing. Having two large banks in the country is a good thing for the country and for the sector. Because that enables actually the ability of both those banks to participate, as well as the other incumbents in the sector, to participate more meaningfully in terms of the projects in the country. Today, most of these projects, our share as banking sector in Oman, from all of them, is on the large scale projects. We could probably put it at 30 to 40%. because of the balance sheet capacity of the individual banks. And maybe Bank Muscat, because it has the largest balance sheet capacity, it gets a slightly higher share, depending. But I think having two large banks is definitely going to give us a better piece of the pie in terms of the lending and the growth side. That's one. Number two, having two large banks in the country is also quite helpful in terms of funding and in terms of the sector, in terms of enabling the funding from outside sources, outside the country into the sector at decent benchmark rates. Because the two stronger banks are going to be able to acquire better funding for and then support the different projects. They have there are two large banks, and then the other banks are much smaller behind. We don't even have that situation here. We have two large banks, but even the other banks are quite sizable. So that's quite, and then Bahrain situation, actually, they're still growing, they're still doing well. We are also here in decent shape, and I think it's quite good for the sector. The consolidation is quite good for the sector. It gives it better growth dynamics. It gives it better fundamentals as a sector. And so from our perspective, yes, there will be competition. But then that's normal. Competition has always been there. We have acknowledged it. We have seen it in the past. The competition is still there, whether it was 7 banks or 5 banks. It's never going to end. It's how you are able to being agile and managing all of this and managing your cost of funds and managing your cost of operations and your customer acquisitions, your footprint in terms of your branches, and a number of different strategic areas. So it's the formula is not just size that enables all of this growth. It is a combination of a number of different factors. But all in all, I will sum up by saying that actually, the larger the banks in Oman, the better it is for the economy, and the better the economy is, the better it is for the sector.
Thank you for that perspective. I mean, thank you so much. And the second
Thanks,
question is, H.E. Musallami, of course, has been a
Right.
CEO of 2 large banks, and then after he became governor, you've got a guy who's obviously been in your position before. Is there and I noticed recently there was revised risk weights for priority sectors. Are there other such initiatives that are going to help the banking sector in terms of growth or even in other ways? Because here's a guy who was obviously a very large personality in the banking sector, and now he's the governor. So I was just wondering, is there a wish list that you guys have that you've gone to him, and any sort of positive news coming for the banking sector?
Yes. Thank you very much, Abbas. Yes, it is quite positive. Previously was a positive era, and now it's also quite positive, and we're quite optimistic from the circular that you have seen, and there are more in the pipeline that we comment on, and that the dialogue continues with the regulator, Central Bank of Oman, and we're quite optimistic actually in terms of different regulations that are going to come up in the future, because the dialogue continues, and the doors of the central bank has been and are continuing to be open for the banks, and the momentum of change is quite good, and we're quite optimistic about it, Abbas.
Okay. So nothing specific you want to comment on right now?
I cannot really comment on anything because most of these are in draft, but we have seen already the positive ones, the ones that you talked about, and the one that on the personal banking regulations were eased up, and that provides good opportunities for all the banks in terms of growth in the retail banking portfolio, and more in the pipeline, I'm sure. So it will all be quite good for the banks.
Sure. Thank you, Sheikh. Okay, all the best to you guys. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. You too. أبو نواف تفضل مرحبا حياك.
السلام عليكم شيخ وليد.
حياك أبو نواف، الله يسلمك ويعافيك.
مساك الله بالخير جميعا إن شاء الله.
الله بالنور
أيام طيبة في هذه الأيام المباركة إن شاء الله.
علينا وعليك بالخير والبركة يا رب، آمين. تسلم
أنا
أبو
الحقيقة
نواف.
دائما سعيد أشارك في نقاشاتك، خصوصا يعني معظم النقاشات، لكن نقاشاتك دائما متميزة أخوي الشيخ وليد،
عزيز.
وبحكم البنك يعني بشكل عام، حجم البنك الكبير وأداء الحقيقة. أنا ما بدخل في التفاصيل عشان ما أضيع وقت كثير. الأمور المالية أظن الأخوان الأجانب يعني فصلوها كثير طبعا. يمكن كمعرفة عامة للإخوان اللي يشوفوا هذه النقاشات، يعني ترى هو البنك الأساس هو الودائع والقروض، ومن أساسه تكون الفوائد والرسوم، ما لنا شيء كبير. لكن الأشياء اللي تفرق من بنك لبنك هي يعني الأداء، اللي هي الإدارة، اللي ما شاء الله يعني البنك حجمه كبير. لما نشوف المخصصات الديون المعدومة عندكم اللي أنت تكلمت عنها شيخ وليد، ما قصرت بالعربي وبالإنجليزي، يعني هذا شيء طيب نسمع من المتحدثين اللغتين، على أساس أن أولادنا وشبابنا اللي هم متخصصين في هذه الأمور تكون عندهم الثقافة. أنا بتكلم عن شيء بسيط، الاجتماعي، الأمور الاجتماعية، الأرقام كلها واضحة. مخصصات الديون المعدومة المتعثرة ما شاء الله يعني نسبة عالية، مثل ما ذكرت أعتقد كان سمعت 170%. فبالتالي متوسط سعر الفائدة عندكم كان دائما هو الأقل ما بين كل البنوك، وهذا اكيد له دور ايجابي على الاقتصاد بشكل عام. يمكن الحين في بنك ثاني صار في اندماج واستفاده من السيوله الموجوده، لكن انتم دائما كنتوا مميزين شيخ وليد يعني. اتمنى لكم التوفيق انتم كل البنوك كلها. انا
آمين.
يمكن بغيت
حياك.
اتكلم عن شيء بسيط اخوي شيخ وليد بخصوص التوظيف. السنه الماضيه كان عندكم ما شاء الله يعني مع فروعكم، مع التكنولوجيا، مع كل شيء ما شاء الله كنتوا قادرين. السنه الماضيه اعتقد شفت كنا 340 توظيف جديد، وهذا الشيء اللي نحن دائما نتمناه من كل شركاتنا المساهمه العامه، ما بس من شركاتنا المساهمه العامه، حتى من الشركات الخاصه. يعني تعرف التوظيف هذا شيء مهم، لكن انا الحقيقه دائما يعني لما اشوف هذه الارقام واشوف حتى الموظفين مالكم السابقين يديروا صاروا في بنوك كثيره، فهذا ما يدل الا على شيء مميز في البنك هذا يعني. فاعتقد في يوم من الايام كان حد من الاخوان كان يسالك في واحده من المنتديات، اظن كانت في المنتدى بورصه مسقط، وكان يسالك اعتقد كاني سمعته يقول لك يعني انت هل عندك مشكله ان الناس تسيب البنك؟ فرديت عليه كان رد اكثر من رائع. الفرص موجوده لكل واحد، نتمنى نستفيد من الشباب اللي هم المتميزين في كل مكان في قياداتهم. فاذا كان في الامكان، اذا عندك اي ارقام، انا حاولت اتواصل مع الاخت الله يذكرها بالخير اللي عندكم مديره العلاقات، لكن ما توفقت اتواصل معها. اذا عندك اي ارقام تعطينا، ونحن في الاجتماع الحين حوالي 100 او 50 او 100 الناس اللي تعينوا في 24 الحين. اذا كان عندك شيخ وليد بكون شاكر، واذا ما كان عندك ترى هي ممكن ان شاء الله يعني اكيد نتواصل معك، واكيد لما نكون في الجمعيه اكيد بنذكر هذا الشيء طيب، لان هذا الشيء انا اعتبرها كثير مهمه لبلدنا واقتصادنا ولكل شيء ان شاء الله. فاذا عندك الرقم بكون
تسلم.
شاكر يعني.
اي نعم، تسلم اخوي ابو نواف، شاكر لك على كل هذا الكلام الجميل، واحنا ان شاء الله نكون دائما عند حسن الظن، وعسى ربي يوفقنا واياكم جميعا. تسلم اخوي. بالنسبه للتوظيف احنا مستمرين على نفس النهج ابو نواف. فعلا مسؤوليتنا مهمه جدا في هذا المجال، واتخذنا انه يعني بمجال التدريب ثم مقرون بالتوظيف على اساس ان نزيد الاعداد. أنا ما تحضرني الأرقام حاليا، لكن ما بتكون أقل من 350 إلى 400 تقريبا في 2024 توظيف. فمستمرين على نفس النهج أبو نواف، يعني إن شاء الله إن شاء الله وبإذنه.
اخوي الشيخ وليد هذا اكثر من رائع ذكرك لهذا الرقم، مع العلم ان الحين عندنا تكنولوجيا وعندنا الذكاء الاصطناعي، مثل ما سمعتك يعني تتكلم مع اللي هو احد من الاخوه الاجانب كان يسالك
نعم.
يعني. فهذا شيء
نعم.
طيب الحقيقه. اتمنى لك التوفيق انت والاخوان
إن شاء
زملائك. نفس
الله.
الشيء المسؤوليه الاجتماعيه الحقيقه. يعني انا يمكن موضوع اللي هو التدريب الشباب اللي هو مع وزاره التربيه والتعليم كثير لفت نظري. جالس اقرا اليوم، دخلت على الموقع مالكم، والحقيقه موقعكم مميز مقارنه بكثير من المواقع. الاخبار
الحمد
اب تو
لله.
ديت، اخبار كثير جيده شفتها تدريبكم حتى للمعلمين. فهذه الثقافه الماليه اعتقد يعني بنكون يعني مطلوبه. لان عندنا بعض الاحيان يعني عندنا اولادنا وشبابنا بعض الاحيان عندهم حتى شهادات، لكن يمكن يعني ما يكونوا بذيك الكفاءه. لكن ان شاء الله انا يمكن التقيت قبل كم يوم مع واحده من الخوات خريجات استراليا لواحده من شركات المساهمه العامه، وسمعت حتى في واحدة من النقاشات. الحقيقة انبهرت بمستوى الأداء مالهم هذول الشباب اللي عندنا حاليا في الأمور المالية خصوصا. فنتمنى نشوف هذه الكفاءات إن شاء الله موجودة هي موجودة، لكن نحن دائما نساعدها حتى بالكلمة الطيبة، ونوصلهم للمكان اللي هم إن شاء الله يعني نتمنى نشوفهم فيه بعون الله.
إن شاء الله.
ما ابغى اطول عليك بالنسبه للموضوع اللي هو الامور الاجتماعيه الاخرى اللي تسووها 346. شفت مال فكربه، وانا كنت حتى على تواصل مع واحده من الاخوه الشركات المساهمه العامه، ما قصروا بعد ما طرحنا الموضوع طوالي. فهذه الاشياء اللي نحن دائما نتناقش فيها، سواء كان على مستوى الجمعيات، على مستوى النقاشات هذه، اكيد تكون هي اثار ايجابيه. اتمنى ان شاء الله شبابنا يشوفوا هذه النقاشات ويشاركوا ان شاء الله مستقبلا. اخي الشيخ وليد، انا قبل كم يوم كنت اشوف نقاش في الغرفه، الحقيقه يعني نقاشات مثريه، كانوا يتكلموا عن الضرائب. اعتقد كان صاحب السمو السيد ادهم كان من ضمن المتحدثين، اخينا خالد السعيدي، اخونا رشاد. يعني كثير كانوا يتكلموا باشياء كثير ممتعه، بس الناس لو تفهم هذا الكلام بطريقه صحيحه بدل ما يسمعوا للتواصل، بعض القنوات التواصل اللي لها اثار سلبيه عندنا. اتمنى نوصل صوتنا بالطريقه الايجابيه، لان نحن كلنا نخدم الوطن بعون الله. اخوي الشيخ وليد، وشاكر شاكر، وانا ودي يعني ما ودي حتى يعني، لكن ادخل في هذه النقاشات، لكن احس ان نقاشات طيبه. ومثل ما قلت لك اتمنى اشوف شباب ان شاء الله كانوا يشاركوا في هذه النقاشات مستقبلا بعون الله.
ان شاء الله. لا انا شاكر لك والله، شاكر لك تفاعلك معنا وتواجدك معنا ونقاشاتك دائما مثريه، ولك كل التقدير على هذه المشاركات ومواظبتك عليها ويعني دائما قلبك واسع وتسمع لنا. جزاك الله خير ابو نواف. ان شاء الله احنا مستمرين على نفس النهج، سواء في المسؤوليه الاجتماعيه وغيرها، وتطوير الشباب اللي معانا ان شاء الله مستمرين فيها ان شاء الله وباذنه. لك جزيل الشكر.
اتمنى لك التوفيق انت وزملائك ان شاء الله، وكل زملائنا الاخرين في كل البنوك والقطاعات الاخرى ان شاء الله.
امين واياكم جميعا اخي ابو نواف. تسلم جزاك الله خير.
بالتوفيق.
للجميع جزيل الشكر والتقدير على حضورهم معنا اليوم ومشاركتهم معنا، ونتمنى لهم إجازة سعيدة و10 أيام أواخر كذلك تقبل فيها منا ومنكم جميعا طاعاتنا وقيامنا، وكل عام وأنتم بخير جميعا. Thank you very much everybody for joining us today. I very much appreciate your presence and wishing you all the best for the weekend and for the remainder of Ramadan. And inshallah, Eid Mubarak to all of you in advance. Thank you.